Hello, everybody. It is Cami and Steve. Welcome back to another video here on That's Comical. We hope you're enjoying your ice cream sundae treats as we bring you these by the scoop as we do a deep dive into The Ice Cream Man by W. Maxwell Prince. But if you're here on a Wednesday, as always, happy new comic book day. And okay, good old-fashioned vanilla. Let's just dive right into this because I am so excited about this issue. I love it so much, Steve. How about you?
So this is one of the reasons why I'm so glad we're doing this segment, Cami, because it's giving me a reason to dive back into these issues and remind myself not just how wonderful and unique this series is, but also to remind myself that some of these issues are some things that you might have forgotten because I didn't remember this issue at all. I completely forgot that it's not to me even a horror issue. Rather, it's a trippy, weird fantasy story. But as someone, because that's the thing, I didn't really talk about this much on this channel because I really don't have to. But even in my own channel that I built so many years ago, I tried to showcase just how much of an appreciator of music I was, as much as an appreciator of TV and film and other parts of entertainment and nostalgia. So this book, this issue 3, Old Fashioned Vanilla, really screams to the music appreciator in me. And that's why I really appreciate it. And I also think that it's such an important issue because this is not going to have any references to Taylor Swift or Charlie XCX or all of these current music stars. And trust me, I don't want to talk about these because I have my own issues with some of these artists. I like some of them. I'm not going to lie about the fact that I happen to be someone who really appreciates Dua Lipa. I want to let that be known. But you've really got to know about your music history, and even the fact that this book has major references to bands from the 50s and 60s. I really forgot how wonderful this issue is. And I am done with my rant.
I didn't get, I mean, I know it has 50s vibes, especially when you start off on the pages with it, but musically though, my mind was really like trapped in the 70s. Also because of the cosmic feel of this particular issue, I felt it was very psychedelic. But no, I totally get where you're coming from because I genuinely don't know what the release date was to some of these songs that are referenced or some of these characters in songs that were referenced, I should say, in this particular issue. So let's talk about our main character. We have Bud Hickey, who is a one-hit wonder. And we start off in a diner and we kind of get, well, no, let me retract. We start off kind of like with a Back to the Future feel where we get, this concert and he's having, this moment, which every one-hit wonder band has. They're singing their one hit and he's getting the crowd excited. And then we allude to that 50s vibe where we hit the airwaves of a AM FM radio, kind of a DJ. We get this church vibe going on. We get really excited about our character. And then that's when we kind of pan into the depression of the diner and he's sitting at a table by himself. And you have these two young kids holding up his album and kind of just talking about him. Like, is that really him? And then you kind of already know you're going to have a sad story on your hands. This immediately also gave me that remembrance feeling of That Thing You Do with Tom Hanks and that whole band vibe, because that really, that was a true story too. And sadly, this happens to a lot of one-hit wonder bands. They just don't know what to do to get that same high of that second hit. And then some people just don't know what to do after the fame,
Oh, just in case anybody doesn't know this, I don't know if you know this, Cami, but this character is a tribute to Bill Haley from Bill Haley and the Comets.
Did not know that. Love that. I see you always come in with those little factoids, and I love that.
And Bill Haley and the Comets,
yes,
their big hit in 1955 was "Rock Around the Clock." which you
There
know
you
from the theme,
go.
which is the first theme song of Happy Days. And a lot of people know that song very well. And I loved the fact that they talked about Elvis, talking about how Elvis was the true great one. And that's the thing. When Elvis Presley hit it big in the late 1950s, they called him what? The king of rock and roll. But because of the fact that he took the spotlight and did specific things as a stage performer and became that true omnipotent presence that embodied rock and roll, we forget about these few artists that literally came just before him. They opened the door for Elvis to walk right in. He just tore the door off the hinges. So that's really who Bud is. It's Bill Haley from Bill Haley and the Comets, which
Well,
I
thank you.
personally loved.
Oh, me too. Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of the 50s and 60s music. I still listen to it avidly today. I think that, the sad thing about music today is it just isn't music, and I really feel like kids are not going to know what it is to be a true musician. I mean, there are some musicians out there that are still killing it. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
That play instruments and write their own lyrics, but they're so far and few in between. When you're talking about the 50s and 60s, I mean, you had entertainers that were in the studio from sun up to sundown, writing songs, recording songs, re-listening, rewinding. That doesn't sound right. Bringing in a guitarist or a drummer or something from another band, it was their life. And they were making peanuts on these songs, but and then you had some that were very fortunate to be able to go on tour and do all these amazing things, but they're not the musicians that we know today. And so to be able to still have references of the greats in an issue like this and be able to share it with future generations is such a magical thing, because music is amazing. I mean, music to me is life. I love everything about music. I think that it's there for you in your happiest times, your darkest times, and there's just so many artists and lyrics that speak to you. And the 50s and 60s were just a revolution in rock and roll, and you're absolutely right. There are certain artists that will be very prevalent in people's minds, and then some will just, only be recognizable to the few that actually sought them out or love their music. So it's really nice to have these nods to them, so people are like, oh yeah, I love that song, I love that artist, and kind of it breathes life into them again.
Well, you're right. I mean, look, we're in the year 2025 right now. And of course, there's now a whole generation of young people that has never listened to the Beatles, which is an absolute darn shame. I know for a solid fact that Teddy's daughter, his oldest daughter, will not even want to listen to the Beatles and listen to her own stuff that's happening right now. I've heard this from my own mother, who was the biggest Beatles fan, who got me into the Beatles. And one of the few things that I personally want to make sure of for my daughter is I am going to make her listen to all of this music. I
My
want her to listen.
did. My parents did. Yeah, it's
No, I
important.
want her to, but that's the thing. You see, when our parents were introducing us to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Queen and the Herman's Hermits and Simon and Garfunkel, those songs were only like 20 years old at the time, 30, going on 30 years old. It is kind of crazy. And I'm also want to state, I don't know if you knew this, because a lot of people these days, myself included, really don't care about the Grammys, but the Beatles won Best Rock Song of the Year for their last song that just came out now and then, which is quote unquote the last Beatles song, and also the very first song to win a Grammy that actually used AI in the best way possible in order to trust me, I
Bring them
can
all together.
go on a massive tangent in regards to this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say this right now. I am planning to make a very special 5th episode to my old Beatles Gnome docs, because this story needs to be told on my Gnome doc, and it needs to complete the entirety of the Beatles history. So the person who accepted the Grammy was Sean Lennon, John Lennon's son. And he actually said to the audience, have your kids and your grandkids listen to the Beatles. Do not let the songs of the 50s, 60s, and the 70s die. But let's you and I also remember that we grew up and came of age in the 90s during the age of grunge, which was the best era of music of all time, as far as I'm concerned.
We absolutely did, I mean, and there's a lot of nod that needs to go to hip hop music too, because hip hop
Oh,
started in the
absolutely.
70s.
I
But
will not Run DMC, Public Enemy,
Yeah.
Fab Five Freddy,
It's very much a part of the 80s
Furious
and
Five.
90s.
I'm not going to forget those guys. Absolutely
No,
not.
but that's the beauty of music, though. That just shows you how well-rounded the two of us grew up. You know, that we had a nice range, and that's what I was about to say. Is that I grew up in a household where my mom was very rock and roll, my dad was very country, and I got that blend also. So you know, there was a lot of older country stars that I was accustomed to listening to as well. And there was that freedom of just expression in my household. You know, find the artist that you love, and then as I started to incorporate, you know, the 90s, the grunge and stuff, my mom would just be like, oh, that's a good song, who's that band? Or my mom would most times, you know, find me the next great hit, and I'd be like, I don't know about that, and then it turns out it's a, you know, top Billboard top 100 hit. But I think that it is vitally important for parents to just smother their kids with the music of yesterday, because there is so much vital importance to learning the foundation of music. And when you fail
Absolutely.
to do that as a parent, you're really failing to keep music alive. So Sean Lennon was dead on when he said that. It is your absolute responsibility, whether your children carry the torch, you know, and they continue to listen to that music, or it falls dead in the water. Everyone is entitled to, you know, what brings them joy and what music they enjoy listening to. But I just think there is so much depth to the music of yesterday, and knowing artists like the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, you know, David Bowie, and I could go on and on and on. There's just so many greats that need to be known by children today. So and it also
Absolutely.
alluded to when you said, you know, so many kids had not heard the Beatles. Remember when he did a track with Kanye West, and everybody was like, "Oh, I hope he,
Oh,
you
Paul
know, gets a
McCartney.
good
Yeah,
career
Paul
out of
McCartney.
this."
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
I'm
That was
like, what?
weird. The fact that
It
we're
was
talking
so
about
odd.
Kanye West these days is weird, but that's another
Oh,
story.
Kanye West has gone off the deep end, and I pray for him every day. That man has just gone psychotic. But that is a story for another day.
Yeah, but anyway, so let's get back on track. I mean, that was great. Don't get me wrong, that was great. So Rick, his role in this issue is truly one of a kind.
Oh,
I
it's
love
magical.
how he tries to, I would personally say what he's trying to do is he's trying to rescue Bud. He's
Oh
trying
yeah.
to rescue him and let him know that he is still a good soul and he is still relevant. And the way that he does it is one of the most unusual but beautiful ways, by bringing him into a literal acid trip where he boards a vessel that clearly is a knockoff of the Yellow Submarine.
Absolutely.
And the people that are on the ship, you literally have David Bowie, or
Yeah.
in that case, in that persona, it's his Ziggy Stardust persona. You have
Yeah.
Captain Jack from the Billy Joel song.
Yeah.
And the weapon of choice to give to Bud, I love it, is the infamous, I forgot what it was actually called in the book, but of course, it is a knockoff to Jimi Hendrix's favorite guitar that he used to record his songs, his Stratocaster, his Fender Stratocaster, classic guitar, a pop. I saw that guitar, believe it or not, on an episode of Pawn Stars. It was crazy to see that guitar. So crazy.
They call it the Hendrix Stratoblaster, is what they
Yes,
reference it.
clear. Yeah, take on the famous, because it's the same color,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that cream colored guitar that he dubbed his favorite, and he never took it on tour or played it live. That was the guitar that he recorded all of his songs in the studio with. A very
Yeah. That,
personal favorite item of his.
talk about a legend in of himself. I
Oh,
mean,
I'm a
when I
big
think
Jimi
of,
Hendrix fan.
yeah, there's just no topping that man on the guitar. He's amazing. Although I will say Ace Frehley did come very close when I saw Kiss live. He played for 30 solid minutes straight in front of my face, and I was just like, oh my God, I could die right
I've
now.
seen I've seen some unbelievable guitar players in concert. I mean, probably I would probably say my two favorites were, well, that's the funny thing. I can't say two because I forgot that Iron Maiden has two guitars, two guitarists, Adrian Smith and Dave Murray. Oh God, together they are phenomenal. But a band that not that many people know about is a band that I've been listening to for many years. They're a band called Dream Theater. I did a whole Gnome doc on
Oh
them
yeah.
too. And John Petrucci holds the world record for fastest guitar player. He is such a talent. And I just listened to their newest album. There's so many great guitarists that have graced the presence of this world.
That would be a great video. Just you and I sitting down and talking about like making a list of our favorite, bassists, guitarists, singers, I miss talking music because that was one of my favorite things from your channel, you coming on. You just had these great segments that you would do every week, and you talking about music was always a highlight for me.
Yeah.
So I miss the days of concert going at reasonable prices.
Yeah. Yeah, even some of the people, I mean, there's still some whole bunch of guitarists that I never got to see live. I mean, like, I've always wanted to see Tom Petty, and I'll never see him play again,
I still
unfortunately.
kick my own ass about Rush. I had an opportunity to see them, and it
Oh, I
was
never
the
had an
year.
opportunity. I had nobody to go with to see Rush. I would have
No,
died to see
I
Rush.
did, but I hesitated because my sister was a little bit younger at the time, and I didn't think she'd really want to go. It was the time when that funny Paul Rudd movie came out, and it was kind of tailored around the band Rush.
Mhm.
And I got her. It was right before her birthday, and I got her like a bunch of Rush CDs and stuff like that. And I should have stuck concert tickets in one of those CDs, but I didn't because I'm like, would she really want to go see it with me? And then the next year, they announced their retirement and they have never come back. So I am kicking my own ass about that. I
Well,
am so mad.
they kind of can't because unfortunately Neil Peart is gone. He's dead.
Well, you can, yes, it will never be the band, but I'm just saying they could come back and add some. We've
Oh
seen
no,
a
no, no,
lot
no,
of
no,
bands
no.
do it.
They'll never be able to match
Well, they
Neil Peart.
probably won't. I mean, that's definitely one of the reasons why they wouldn't. But I'm just, yeah, I'll never get over that. I should have done that.
Yeah,
But
me too.
back to our acid trip story. So yeah, so we're kind of on this planet. It almost looks like these beings are smudges of ice cream, melted ice cream, if you will, and they're chasing around these characters. And the whole idea and concept of this is Rick has led Bud here to kind of find that second hit, that sophomore hit, if you will.
Mhm.
And it is that hit that is supposed to kind of save them in this planet. And you have Ruby Tuesday, who is kind of heading the pact on this, which is absolutely kick ass. And it just alludes to this really tripped out planet of, melted ice cream, all these vivid
Very
colors.
psychedelic.
And then they're facing the Conehead, and the Conehead does resemble Rick, despite the fact that he does take on the persona in the story of Major Tom. And I will say
Yes.
that Space Odyssey is hands down my favorite David Bowie song of all time. I hum it constantly when it comes on the radio. It's linked as a favorite on my Sirius XM, and I will immediately go to it and just jam out to it. It's just such a good song. But as soon as I saw that 13 pages into this issue, I was like, oh shit, I forgot how good this really is. We've got
Yeah.
Major Tom on the page.
Yeah. It's so. I'm telling you, it was such. This issue was just a welcoming. It was a welcoming treat. That to me, it was just because I completely forgot this issue entirely. And you know something, that's not necessarily a bad thing because we have to remember we're now 44 issues deep into Ice Cream Man, and we have, and in the words of the great Doc Brown, we have seen some serious shit. So it's kind of hard to remember
Yeah.
some of these truly wonderful. That's the craziest thing. We've talked about the first two issues, and we've talked about the horror factor, we've talked about the darkness, and yet this one this issue to me, even though there's a lot of melancholy, a lot of somber moments in it, but it's such a hopeful and uplifting issue at the same time. It really is a delight to read. I gotta be honest. It is a very delightful read.
Yeah, coming off the first two issues, which is very dark, very, very dismal. There's all gray skies. This is definitely a breath of fresh air because you're absolutely right. It does give you this feeling of hope, that there is a little bit of good in every evil entity, and that includes Rick. And I do think though that Rick connects with Bud in this way because Bud is really on his last leg. He's really just down in the dumps. And I think that for Rick, he kind of needs that lack of luster, the lack of life in order to be able to connect with somebody. It is reassuring though that in a way he does try to help him and help him find that, second win, so to speak. But we do start basically at the beginning and come to the end on that same ominous feeling of doom and despair that, it is what it is and here we are kind of
Well, I
feeling.
still think the most important thing, and this is where I take what I took from it. I like the fact that at the end, to a degree, Bud does end up saving the world because he uses, he doesn't even think, in the end, he never even gives us his second hit. He just uses his original hit that made him the icon at the time for what he is. And that is a message to me that says, don't let the classics die because the classics are
He did
still
slightly
good
modify the words though.
to a certain degree, but it's still,
It's still
something.
relevant, absolutely.
Think about the fact that this is what most artists do at their concerts. Like they
Oh,
will
absolutely.
play their songs and they'll throw in some additional lyrics for the purposes of whether it's they just want to have some fun or if they actually want to make a political statement, because everybody's allowed to do what they want to do at their shows. They're in the spotlight. But the fact that it hits home to me that we do not let the classics die. We remember the history of music and where we were and how we got here because like I said, we're now at a point where a whole, possibly even two generations don't know anything about the beginnings of what their modern music is. I mean, look, am I somebody that knows big names from the 30s and the 40s? No, absolutely not. But I know that he's the Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy of Company B. I know that song, Old Man River. Like, I know these are the big songs for a certain time.
Right.
And it's important because even though in 2020, 2025, I always will remember, don't step on my blue suede shoes. Like these are the things that we need to remember. We need to keep those fresh in our minds.
Well, and
And
this
it is,
stands to
yeah.
reason with the argument of saving the arts too, though, because when we think of education and we think of grade school and middle school, high school, the arts is the first thing that always gets cut. And I think a music appreciation course would go such a long way, and that we could do the history of music in a course like that and keep the music alive, introduce kids that may not get that exposure at home. Because let's be frank, maybe the parents just aren't privy to some of these bands. And so that's why these kids are not hearing the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and David Bowie and all of these things. There are still some really cool kids out there, though. I'll be honest. My nephew is one of them. Sometimes he'll call me and he'll be singing the song. I'm like, what are you singing? Is that, XYZ? He loves, the old stuff. He's always jamming out. And I think he's cooler than me.
Hey,
He
do you
just,
want to hear? Do you want to hear a really cute story? This literally happened today. So as I
yeah,
was putting my daughter to bed, sometimes she starts doing things that I've never heard before, and I want to try and understand what she's saying. Like, this is not the thing, but my wife and I have been trying to figure out. She's been saying this weird word, and she keeps saying that it's from Bluey. And I know that you're a fan. So we
absolutely.
finally saw the episode, even though we saw this episode 100 times. We now know that she was finally yelling Papachi. Like I remember that episode. We couldn't, but that's not the thing. So I was getting her ready for bed, and all of a sudden she was going like, "I feel standing." I'm like, "Are you singing Elton John's "I'm Still Standing"?" And so I'm like,
That's
I started
awesome.
singing it. So I started singing it to her, and she's like, "Yeah." So I turned up the song on my phone, and we actually sang it together because sometimes we'll hear it in the car, so she knows the song. So the fact that she was singing an Elton John song was such a wonderful thing for me. And now I know that there are some places where you can watch old TV shows. And,
Yeah.
I was holding a mug of coffee this morning and it had Looney Tunes characters on there. And she saw the character faces. They looked lighthearted and friendly, like cartoons that she watches, like Bluey and Paw Patrol. And so she was asking me, who are all these characters? So I introduced her to
Okay.
every single one of them. 2 weeks ago, she watched an episode of Woody Woodpecker.
That's
I
awesome.
introduced her that, and she loved Chili Willy. So there is hope. That's the point I'm
No,
trying to make.
absolutely. Where there's a glimmer, there's definitely hope. And you know, where there's an eager kid who is interested, whether it's in one song or a whole catalog of music, I think that any kid that shows an interest and ask questions, we should not be too busy to answer those questions and do exactly what you did. Pull out the devices that are constantly in our hands and play the music and sing along with these kids, and you know, just have fun and share that energy and that joy, because that time frame is so small and small, so minute, that we only have a fraction to capture these kids, you know. And to share in their joy and their excitement and answer their questions is what's going to catapult them into becoming fans of these amazing artists.
Yeah.
And I just get excited when kids get excited about these things, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've been DVRing a whole bunch of old TV shows now because I found this channel on my cable box, Catchy Comedy, and I've been DVRing the Dick Van Dyke Show amongst a few, and I've never seen that many episodes. So when my in-laws were over, I was actually watching one of the episodes, and it was just great to just have two different generations sitting in a room watching the show and just enjoying it. You know, like I love Dick Van Dyke. You know, I watched Mary Poppins God knows how many times.
Oh
But
gosh,
that's
yes.
what I'm saying. It's like I'm glad that there are people out there making efforts to, because again, that to me is the whole point of this issue of Ice Cream Man. Rick has a moment of good where he's trying to save this man and let him understand that he is still worth it, because it is kind of sad when Bud officially awakes. He's literally been in the diner this whole time. Literally, he passed out. It was weird, but at the same time, you know, it was the journey that he went on. That even though he is still somewhat forgotten and he is still alone, he walked a little taller that day at the end of the issue. At least that's what I got out of it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely alluded to what the two youngsters in the diner were saying, you know, that he kind of hits the sauce early in the morning. So I kind of felt like he just kind of maybe had a blackout moment, and it took him to this planet of ice cream, melting ice cream figures. But yeah, absolutely. I still felt that he was empowered in this story, and I felt like he did kind of walk out the victor. Even if it was one day, he still came out ahead and he felt good about himself. You know, it was still a dreary day, and it is what it is kind of thing, you know, it's in terms of the dialogue of the story. But I do feel that this was a win. You know, this is still going to come down to probably one of my favorite issues of this series, and I'm so glad we got to revisit it, because like you
Oh
said, I
yeah.
forgot so much of it, and I was so sad when I was reliving it, because I'm like, this is so good, why am I not talking about this?
Yeah, it's a great issue. I
It
again,
is.
I felt sorry for myself. I was mad because I completely forgot this issue, and it was so great to revisit it. And
Yeah.
what a conversation it turned into. It went in so many different directions.
I know, but you know
I
what?
hope
You and I are
watched it
such
made sense.
you and I are such nostalgia buffs, and you know, we are of the same generation. We had very similar upbringings in terms of what we were exposed to, and the display of physical media behind you is much like my life. You know, I keep CDs, I keep DVDs, I keep, you know, all of the nostalgia of yesteryear. I still have a VCR. I'm still, you know, always revisiting the eras, and I love musicals. I'm very fortunate to have a mom that introduced me to musicals very early on in life, and I grew to love them well beyond the Wizard of Oz, which I think is what most kids are exposed to first and foremost, you know. And you either love musicals or you hate them. Sound of Music, I know, is another one. Mary Poppins, you alluded to earlier. I think that's very
Very
common amongst Disney goers.
The very first live action movie I ever watched was a musical. It was The Music
Oh,
Man.
cool. Oh, well, perfect. So
The
yeah, we
Music
definitely
Man is
had
one of my
similar
all-time favorite films. I mean, I even love some of the musicals that came out in the last. I mean, look, I still haven't seen Wicked. I have my reasons for that, and it's not negative stuff, but I adore La La Land. I
I
adore
love
that
La La Land.
film,
It was
and
great. Yeah.
and and now one of my feel-good movies. If I ever want to be put into a good mood, like it took me such a long time. I didn't see this movie until I was in college, but Singing in the Rain is now one of my
Oh, I
all-time
was
favorite
hoping you'd
movies.
say that.
And I have my Don Lockwood Funko Pop, which I'm so proud
Absolutely.
of. I also love the fact that the
Beautiful.
Elton John biopic Rocket Man was a musical. I loved
Oh
that.
yeah, same
I
here. Yeah,
love that.
absolutely.
I
Gene
love the
Kelly.
fact that South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut was a musical.
Some people just don't ever reference that, but you're absolutely right. No, yeah,
No,
Gene
it's
Kelly for me is hands down the my absolute favorite. I will watch any of his movies, but Singing in the Rain, there's just something just extra special about that film that I have to revisit it, at least once a year. And I've been fortunate to see it on the big screen too, which
oh
was super
wow.
magical. But yeah,
Well,
it's issues like this that really just kind of reincarnate all of that and allow for good conversations like this. I'm so glad it went in a thousand different directions because maybe someone watching will be like, wait, let me write that down. Who's that? And what movie is this? And that's how you get people to venture off into the uncharted territory and watch the movies and listen to the music. And that, I think that's why you and I still exist on the platform that we do, because we just keep nostalgia alive with no shame. It brings us absolute existential joy.
by the way, that extra special thing about Singing in the Rain, it's Donald O'Connor. End of story.
Oh
That's what
yeah,
makes that movie so special. I
oh,
love that. I
absolutely.
love him.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many. I could just do a whole segment about Singing in the Rain. It's fantastic. But I'm so glad you talked about the pop because that's one darn good pop that's in my
Oh
collection
yeah, I
too.
haven't even featured it on my channel yet. I'm planning to do that. I'm going to be doing that very very soon. It's time because I've been getting a lot of pops and I have to spread them out because I don't want to say, like I always say in my video, I don't ever want to sit down and say I ran out of pops. So
I don't think I ever will. Every time we have a conversation about Funko and I tell you, that's it, I'm done. I don't have this space. I go and pre-order like
there's
8
another
more.
5 pre-orders.
Don't even talk to me about my
You bought
pre-orders right
you
now.
pre-ordered the
Anyway,
Lance Pop, right?
absolutely. We need to
Yeah,
have
we
another
did too.
Funko conversation soon. But this will wrap up this episode of The Ice Cream Man by The Scoop. Steve, this was a great
I
conversation.
loved
Thanks
it.
so much for joining me
Of
for good old
course.
fashioned vanilla. We will be on the track for issue number 4, which I didn't come prepared with the title. What's the title of issue number 4?
If I actually had the book in front of me, I'd tell you.
Hold on, you'll have to cut out this.
I will. I
Uh,
will. Don't worry
okay,
about it.
Okay, so that leaves us right on track for issue number 4 that we are lined up for. Every good boy does fine. Until next time, thanks so much for joining us. As always, if you enjoyed this conversation, leave us some dialogue in the comment box, subscribe, hit that bell notification if you want to be up to date with all of our latest videos and content, because we will be back for another great discussion and we are looking forward to it. Take care,
Hey,
everyone. Stay safe.
thanks for watching all.
Bye bye.